And I'm thrilled now to be joined by Representative Mark Amodei, longtime representative of Northern Nevada in the U.S. House, the only Republican in our delegation. Congressman Amodei, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for the invite, Ben.
Yeah, before we get into the substance and the meat here, I saw you pull up in a bright blue SUV. Normally you're coming in a pickup truck. Did you get the new truck? I know you're a car guy.
Well, if a 1999 two-door Tahoe is new, then yeah.
Just wash after the rainstorms, it would appear, because it was sparkling.
That was my last new vehicle purchase from Champion Chevrolet down the street, and obviously they say don't love something that doesn't love you back, but I really like it.
As much as we'd love to chat trucks and cars, and I'm sure you would for the next half hour, we got to get into, obviously, the big news of the week, which is President Donald Trump imposing tariffs on Wednesday, on Liberation Day, on dozens of countries, specifically different industries, the auto industry, and the economic fallout, shall we call it, stock market tumbling and the worst kind of stretch here in the last few days since the pandemic. A month ago, you said that Trump's tariff policy, you wanted to, quote, flow with that and reevaluate the impacts in a month. You called it a game of chicken. Evidently not a game of chicken anymore. Do you support this policy?
Well, I think it still is a game of chicken. Those are my low-tech words. What is it? It's 2 days old now. Still definitely work in progress. We'll see what the reaction is. He's not the only player in the game. So, but I'll tell you this. I do support trying because, frankly, when you get away from the stock market for the last 12 hours, it's like the status quo before that, I think, Ben, is unsustainable. You've got countries that are imposing huge tariffs on us, which we're not reciprocating. We've got lots of over the years, and I don't see it as it's not Joe Biden's fault or Barack Obama's fault or the Republicans' fault. Our history has been going back probably 30 years at least we've outsourced a lot of stuff. And we found that out most recently in COVID when you're talking about, oh, by the way, we got a shortage of this, that, or the other. Oh, and the supplier is China. Now, I'm not here to bash China, but let's face it. They are a big part of this rare earth, big deal here in Nevada. We got battery stuff. We got the minerals industry. We've got all sorts of stuff going on, and it's like the status quo can't continue. So this is a chapter in it, yesterday and today, and his big announcement the day before, and he's following through on that. So let's see how it looks a week from now, a couple weeks from now, et cetera.
Do you expect that he will back off of these at some point? Because, I mean, I think the experts are saying there's going to be huge economic impact for Nevadans, Americans, when it comes to the price of cars, of groceries, of all the things that we, lumber from Canada, et cetera. I mean, this is going to raise costs significantly.
Well, I get all that, but just between this morning, before you and I started talking, you've got some players, not the major players, but Vietnam saying, hey, we want a 0-1, big deal in textile stuff. You've also got Ford saying we're going to give everybody employee prices. You got Hyundai saying we're freezing prices for, I don't know what it was, a couple weeks or a couple of months. So the prognostication, especially in something like financial services, is nothing new. And so you've got, listen, nobody's happy about the stock market dropping the way it has in the last 2 days, but I don't think the story's over yet.
Yeah. Do you think we have the capacity? I mean, I think most experts would say, at least as it stands right now, we don't have the capacity to bring all of these industries to America right now, let alone the labor force that, especially you mentioned textiles. These are people making very low wages in third world countries often. Like, we don't have enough labor force that want to work those jobs or the factories to be able to do it right now.
Well, I guess that's part of what needs to work out here. I know that there were people saying for automakers, like, hey, it's going to take 5 years to build a plant. Well, actually, there's some idle ones around who they say, oh, that'll be 6 months or something like that. Closer to home here, when you talk about the lithium loop, for instance, because electric vehicle batteries with the Panasonic folks or the recycling folks at Redwood next door to them out here east of here, that sort of stuff is like, hey, that needs to happen post-haste. Like it or not, the reality between the U.S. and China right now is not good. They're a military rival, strategic rival, commercial rival. And so when you talk about being reliant upon them for like electric vehicle batteries, key components, we got to bring that to a stop. And it's like, well, we'll get around to it. It's like they're not getting around to flexing their muscle. You saw that they said, oh, you want to raise on us? We're going to give you 34%. There you go. That's a very real competition that stretches into everybody's life, and we need to get aggressive about it.
One of the most conservative senators, Rand Paul, said, quote, the truth is that tariffs are taxes. They don't punish foreign governments. They punish American families. Do you agree with that?
Well,
that it's going to function as a tax for Americans?
Let me put it this way. Nobody's saying it's going to cost less. And so I think when we started out and you said, well, is it a game of chicken? It's like, yeah, I think it is. Do I think we're going to bring all those people to their knees? No. I think there's multiple objectives there. Make it a little more fair in terms of what the numbers are. And also at the same time, though, you should strategically and just intelligence-wise bring some of those production areas back, because if they're not here, we're vulnerable to where they are. And in too many cases, Ben, where they are is China.
Do you think the Trump administration overall, when it comes to the tariff policy, but in general, has done enough to lower costs for Nevada families? Because that was perhaps the most critical thing that got him elected last year, was people were frustrated about inflation, high prices, the cost of living, et cetera.
Well, I guess it depends on what's your limit for when prices are lowered. And that doesn't mean, oh, we'll check with us later. But it's like gas prices are dropping, mortgage prices are dropping. Big thing when you talk about an area where we talk about affordable housing. So there are signs there. Last jobs report was good. Doesn't matter what the prices are if you don't have a job, and a job that pays a living wage. So there's some good news in there. Nobody should say mission accomplished. And by the way, nobody should say, well, listen, I'll tell you, practically speaking, there's a midterm election that's, for all intents and purposes, in Nevada, a year away. You got to sign up in March if you want to run for office. So for midterms here in Nevada, and around the country in the House of Representatives, which is kind of tight, it's like, listen, if there isn't material progress at that point in time, you would expect Donald Trump not to end up with a majority in the House of Representatives, maybe the Senate. So when you say delivering on those promises, one day people are upset because it seems like they're acting precipitously. But by the next one, it's like, hey, the clock's running on midterms, and if you want both of those houses still to work with, then you got to make sure those people aren't put in a position where they get kicked out.
So what I'm hearing from you, of course, is that you support the tariff policy as it is now. Does there come a point, or when is the point when the costs that are going to be borne by Americans are too high of a cost to pay, and when would you start to push back on that?
Well, I think at the outer limit, if you can't go to people in a year and say, hey, thanks for your trust, it's working, then it's like that's not the high ground, depending on what the individual circumstances are. But I don't know. It's like, hey, he did this, what did he call it? Freedom Day or Liberty Day or
Liberation
something?
Day.
Liberation Day. So it's like, hey, let's see how this looks. Nobody's got a lot of patience, including Donald Trump. And so, you know what? Let's see what it looks like in 30 days, 60 days, whatever. But I can just tell you the culture right now is instant gratification. And so if you think it's just check with me later and we'll check in with you, it's like that isn't going to work. You got to show some results in a timely fashion.
Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about Signal and the confidential attack plans that were shared in this group chat with Pete Hegseth and many other people in the military, and also the editor of The Atlantic in this group chat. Confidential information talking about the precise location and when they were going to drop bombs on the Houthis in Yemen. You can agree, of course, that is confidential information that was shared in that chat.
Well, I can agree that those folks talking about that subject isn't something that should have been going out to, no offense, Ben, somebody in the media.
I agree with that too.
So anyhow.
Yeah. And you agree then that it's a crime to mishandle, misuse, or abuse classified information, right?
No, I don't, because I'll tell you what, we had plenty of that going in the last administration, and there was nothing done as a result of that. Not that I'm happy about saying, but let's face it, what's a crime and what isn't a crime at the national level in the various in a given administration, the line on what is and isn't no longer exists. So if you say, is that a crime? I'm going to say, well, not in recent times, and we've got plenty of examples where it wasn't. And the reason we know we've got plenty of examples is because the pardon people are going, are working full time for people to have pardons that ostensibly, if it wasn't a crime, they wouldn't need them.
Okay, putting crime aside,
Yes.
do you think Congress should have oversight hearings in this matter?
They are. Yes, and they are. I think several of them in both houses have already taken place. Not that they're done, but they're Yes. The answer to your question is yes.
Yeah. I mean, what are you going to hope to find through that process? Do you condemn the use of, signal chats for confidential information such as this?
Well, fair question. Of course, you've asked me, and nobody knows me as a tech guy. And so it's like I just got texting down, much less a group chat and all that stuff. Obviously, there's a ton of people paying attention to it. So it's not front and center on our radar screen right now in Homeland, except that we will ask when we get the policy from the Homeland Policy Committee, and we're asked to appropriate for CISA, which is the cybersecurity people on the civilian side. What we'll do is we'll say, from our oversight thing, what are we doing to make sure that some idiot like me can't get in on a group text or chat or whatever it is. I just think it's poor judgment to be in if I'm on a text with X number of people and it's anything in the neighborhood of sensitive. I mean, I don't crime, not crime. It's like that's probably not great judgment, you know.
Yeah, Democratic colleagues and I believe some Republicans too have said this could have resulted in American service members being injured in this operation.
Well, I'm not going to be part of the culture of spin, but it's like, well, yeah, and you know what? It could have. I mean, could have anything. You name it. I just think it's like, hey, it sounds like we need some safeguards in place, regardless of whether it's Democrats or Republicans that are doing it, and they're in those situations. There ought to be some protocols, especially in this day of hacking and stuff, where it's like even if you weren't on a group chat, you really ought to think about if you send a text to me, whether or not somebody else is reading it.
Do you support what Elon Musk has done when it comes to DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency? You, of course, fiscal conservative, probably want to limit the size of government. Do you support that effort?
Well, first of all, you've mispronounced it. In Sparks, we have the nugget. We don't have the nougat. And so if you want to ask me questions about that, that's fine, but it's doggy. As a product of public education in Nevada, where they taught phonics, it's doggy as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, I'll update my...
Yeah. Well, just do the best you can. It's okay. But anyhow, listen, I support the concept of we should always be taking a look at what we're doing and how we're spending money, okay? Does Elon get style points when he's waving? And I'm a guy who owns 5 chainsaws. Mm-hmm. It's like, you probably could have used some comms help on how you've approached some of this stuff. And also, I think that opinion has been backed up because since they first came out and started doing their stuff, which was largely algorithm-based, which is fine to start with, but there was a tweet a couple weeks ago from the president after he'd met with his cabinet to say future doggy-related recommendations are going to go to the cabinet secretaries, and they will be ultimately responsible for that. That, I think, is a good idea, is a good step in the right direction. And why? Because just saying people that have been here for 2 years, since we will get rid of them, is not the kind of level of detail that you should look at. Some examples for us here in Nevada are we want to make sure that when we talk about firefighting personnel, that we know what we're doing and not placing us at risk for stuff like that. When you look at cybersecurity, there were people that were like, hey, you're too... So do I support the general concept? Yes, I do. Do I think it needed to have some guardrails on it from the beginning, which are getting in place now? Yes, I do. And the fact that they didn't, once again gets down to the comms business, where whoever was in charge of the comms for this whole thing could have done a much better job.
I'll tick through just a couple of the programs that have been cut or eliminated because of this. $8 million in cuts to school and food bank programs in Nevada. The Nevada State Public Health Laboratory is going to lose about $35 million. We learned today that Nevada Humanities federal funding was terminated immediately. That organization fighting for its survival. I mean, you support cuts to all of those agencies and programs?
No, I don't support the cuts to all those, but when you tick through the ones where it turns out that they were doing transgender operation research in outer Slobovia or something like that, there were a whole bunch of success stories in there. So to represent that program as just it was this, and that, first of all, is not balanced, but you don't have to be. But the other thing I'll tell you, though, is everybody that has come to us, and we have put it out, and I'd love to have your list, and I'll report back to you on the air. What we've been doing for the last 3 weeks is saying, okay, Nevada Humanities, have you come to us? What's the source of the grant? We'll go find it and ask if it's still cut or if the funding's been paused, food banks, stuff like that. And I'll be happy to share with you, even if it's not on your list, the stuff that we've done in terms of, was it a veterans program? Was it an education program? Was it a food program? Was it a seniors meals program? We're in the process of going and ground truthing all of that stuff. And as a matter of fact, I was on the phone today with the White House saying, you guys have paused funding for a $20 million project in Schurz that has nothing to do with DEI. It has to do with infrastructure, water system, insulation for homes out there, stuff like that. And we want the $20 million back. And I want to talk with Lee Zeldin about that, former colleague, who's the EPA administrator, because that money should be put back in the pipeline for that. So it's not a, well, it's done and nobody's whatever. You had mentioned oversight before, which is, you should have. It's like we're all over the oversight on everything that somebody comes to us with. But I want to stress this, Ben, and that's this. If you don't tell us, and we tell everybody that comes in the office, and we got plenty of people each week or that are on the phone, give us the program, give us the information we can, and what we owe you is to go check on it and say what's going on, should this appropriately have been done or not, i.e. advocating for that funding in Nevada.
And the reason I point out those is not, it's not random. It's those are programs that specifically have been cut in Nevada specifically, and as far as I know, none of them have anything to do with transgender operations.
And I have no problem with that at all. That's fair. But what I'm saying is if the Arts Council hasn't reached out to us, if they've just said, well, it's cut and we're hosed and we're fighting for our life, and they haven't reached out to us to say, hey, what can you do to help us? Then I would encourage you to encourage them. Please give us a call. Tell us what it is, and we'll go to work on it.
Have you heard from, like, say, the food bank when it comes to the Home Feeds Nevada program, locally grown food for lower income people?
Off the top of my head as we sit here, no. Okay. Because I get a list every week from my staff. I call it whack-a-mole. It's like, we got this one, that one. There's a lot of them. And so it's like, where are we at on following up with this, that, the other? But I'll check. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what I'll do when we leave is I'll call and say, call the food bank and ask them what they got that Ben's got that we don't have if you want us to work on it.
Okay. Do you support eliminating the Department of Education?
I don't know. I haven't seen enough about it yet. I can tell you this. I like things where the money's given to the state and the state's given responsibility. I just like working that better. So
you don't, I mean, they've already, signed the executive order, cut half of the workforce.
I know that, but there's a lot of stuff to come still. Congress does still matter, contrary to what some of the spinsters say. And so that story isn't, the last line isn't written on that yet. I can tell you that when it comes before us, what I'll do is we'll call the Department of Education, we'll call the governor, we'll call the Nevada budget people, we'll meet Teachers Association, the whole, and go, so tell me what you think this effect would have on Nevada. What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? As far as deciding how we vote on it.
I have to ask, is there a part of you that is, I don't know if concerned or worried is the right word, but, Congress has the power of the purse. That is a power that has historically been with you guys in the House and in the Senate. And many people would say that a lot of the actions of the Trump administration have kind of unilaterally made these cuts without congressional approval, taking away some of the power of Congress. How does that sit with you?
Well, I would remind people that without checking with us, is not an accurate conclusion, since when I go back, we're knee-deep into the appropriations process, which is we have to approve reconciliation, which is all about money, and we're starting the 2026 appropriations process at the same time, which is all about money. And so I expect that process to be respectful of what the administration wants to do, because I'm a believer in, regardless of what the topic is, just because we've always done it this way doesn't mean we shouldn't look at different ways to do things. And so this administration wants to look at the education department. We'll look at it. But nothing has been decided as far as how appropriations go. And, you know, here's a good question that in the evaluation. Student loans go over to Small Business Administration. Okay. How much are you guys recommending? How much is the administration recommending that SBA gets cut? At the same time, you're adding a loan portfolio program that's fairly large. So as an oversight person, it's like, I kind of want to know how that works. Tell me how you're going to take on the management of all these loans, the administration of them, and the program, and you're going to have less money. Now, maybe there's a good answer, Ben, but I haven't heard it yet, and I think it's a fair question to have the answer to.
Let's talk about money still as it pertains to Medicaid. The House Republican budget has directed the committee overseeing Medicaid to make $880 billion in cuts here, and nonpartisan experts and groups have said it's impossible to make that much money or to cut that much without touching Medicaid. So in essence, this budget, this resolution would make significant cuts to Medicaid. Our Republican governor, Joe Lombardo, has said these cuts would hurt Nevada. Do you agree?
Well, once again, we called a meeting of all hospital executives and the state, Stacy Weeks, the state HHS department, to say, tell us how Medicaid works in Nevada. Tell us about original Medicaid, which is pregnant folks, young kids, disabled old folks, and then the expansion population, which is part of Obamacare. We want to know what all those numbers are and how Nevada compares with other states in terms of what we're spending in Nevada. Because if you're going to cut, first of all, you've said, Republicans, we will not touch traditional core Medicaid. Pregnant women, young children, disabled elderly. And so it's like, well, how much is that? Because if my people have said they're not cutting it, then we don't need to worry about that. We need to worry about the expansion population. How are you going to cut the expansion population? So we had that meeting, had that discussion. That was about 2 weeks ago. We are forwarding out to all hospital folks and the state saying, here's what we understand the baseline where we start out. Here's the actual millions of dollars here. What piece of the state general fund budget goes to Medicaid? What piece of that goes to traditional Medicaid? And what piece goes to the expansion population? And how can we make it cheaper for states? Because each state runs its own program. And so it's like, how can we make it better for states when they're buying pharmaceuticals, blah, blah, blah. How do you save money without, Ben, just saying, we're not giving you as much money and we're just pushing it down to you and good luck? Our goal is to avoid that to the maximum extent possible. And where you work there is administrative efficiencies and the expansion population. So you've probably heard.
You do support cutting the Medicaid expansion?
No, I don't. Well, here's what they've said. We think you ought to work if you're able-bodied. So what that means is, Ben, okay, so if you're between age X and Y, you got to work 20 hours a week. Well, what are the requirements of that in Nevada? How are you going to administer that? I don't know if the way they administer it, if we go down that road, we haven't gone down that road yet. The committee hasn't started. They're not even close to a markup. But it's like, heck, by the time they get done with that, maybe everybody that's on it qualifies, which means whatever. I guess my point in all this is we're trying to basically get to bedrock in terms of what the facts are in Nevada. But the one thing that isn't in Nevada, Ben, is we in Nevada rank 37th out of what we spend on that population nationwide. Mm-hmm. And so the point here is, and one of the things we're going to, I'm going to meet with the committee chairman, Chairman Guthrie, is if everybody spent at our rate, how much of that $880 billion would you have taken care of? Because I'd like to know that, first of all, you shouldn't be coming to Nevada for a single penny of that unless you've already got to the people who are spending more than us. So I'm looking forward to the fact-based discussion instead of, well, it's instead of spin conclusions, which are, well, you're going to have to cut core Medicaid. It's like, no, I don't. I didn't say I'd vote for that.
So you won't vote for a budget that
I will
cuts.
read the bill and be very clear on if I support it, what I think the impacts are to Nevada, and if I oppose it, it'll be based on what I think are wrong impacts to Nevada, which is the same what I did with Obamacare and stuff like that years ago. We will have a fact-based reason for doing what we do. But before you skip to that, it's like, and I know I'm probably too much in the weeds for all this, but it's like, I want to be able to go affect what's in the bill based on effective lobbying on my part of my colleagues for why Nevada is as special as any of the other states.
We're going to tick through a couple of topics here in our as we kind of start to wrap up, but there's so much to get to. I mean, do you support the Trump administration's approach to legal immigration so far in this term?
I don't know what it is.
You
What's the approach? You said the Trump administration's approach. Are you talking about dreamers, or are you talking about the 1.5 million
mass
folks?
deportations? Let's start there.
Well, but here's the deal: the first 1.5 million, Ben, have already been through the asylum process, had their due process, and had a judge say you're not entitled to it. Do I support getting rid of those folks? Yeah, they've had their due process. Another 500,000 are convicted felons, gang members, blah, 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 folks that you probably don't want walking up and down the street in your neighborhood. Yeah, I support that. We haven't got to what comes after that. So when I see the proposal, they've deported 100,000 out of that 1.5 million. Those are the facts. Do I support that? Sure I do. But when we get through the other 1.4 million, and it's like, okay, people that haven't been through the process, which says they're not entitled to stay, it's like, obviously I support that. If you're a felon, a gangbanger, or whatever, then yeah, I support that. For all those folks that have been here like dreamers, it's like, well, tell me what the deal is. There's some ways to do that where they shouldn't be mass deported. Tell me
some
about
of those people who have been kind of caught up in that process already. There's administrative error that caused this Maryland man, this father with protected legal status, to be sent off to this prison in El Salvador.
Well, that's
he didn't
fine.
get his due process.
If you want to know whether I agree with that or not, then give me the facts and I'll tell you. Don't tell me a general question which, do you support mass deportation? Mass deportation is an agenda term, which frankly doesn't do either one of us any good in terms of clarity. So if you want to talk about political, cultural spin conclusions, then we can get talk of that all day long. When you say, Amodei, what do you stand for? I'll tell you what I stand for. There's no question I stand for people who have had their asylum hearings and been denied. Yes, they should go home. There's no question that if you're a convicted felon, gang member, blah, 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 yeah, you should go home. After that, if there's an aberration for whatever, then it's like, I'll be happy to do that on a case-by-case basis, but you got to give them to me, other than I'm telling you there's a guy in Maryland that maybe shouldn't have gone. Yeah,
that story's made national news because he was sent off to this prison without his due process. I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is, do you think that the administration has maybe gone about this a little too haphazardly, so that now there have been a handful of these instances where people are getting caught up in this process that don't have a criminal history or background?
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. You tell me what you think the things are like the one you're referring to, and I'll bring it up specifically since I have the budgets for Homeland Security, which includes ICE and Border Patrol. You give me the specifics, and I'll do some oversight work and get back with you on, A, whether it was legit, in my opinion, or not, or B, what they've done to rectify it so it doesn't happen again.
Okay, sounds good. Town halls. You haven't hosted a town hall at least in public since 2017, and I'll read a quote directly from you. Town hall is now a code word for let's go bully the shit out of somebody in public.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you mean by that?
Well, here's what I mean by it. I'm not going to do an apology tour because Donald Trump has won Congressional District 2 for the last 3 presidential cycles. Now, I know there are people in Congressional District 2 that didn't vote for Donald Trump. But as Rahm Emanuel said, as the chief of staff for Barack Obama, elections have consequences. And so we've got one of the most open offices there is. We've taken over 3,000 calls in the last 45 days from people saying, Musk sucks, Trump sucks, we hate him, blah, 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 all that. I got it. You have every right to voice that. But let me tell you what. I've also been to the town halls where people who were upset with who had won bust people in from even out of the district to fill up over 600 people at a room at the convention center where we have to pay for security, which is fine. They should have to do that. And watch them just basically, it wasn't like, let's talk about issues and facts on what the policy ought to be. It's just screaming and yelling saying we hate whatever. Guess what? I think after the amount of time that I've been here, I know how to recognize that. And so it's like you want to come into the office with a group of a half a dozen people and go, here's what we don't like about the Department of Education plan. Here's what we don't like about deportation. That's all day, every day. But if you think that it's like, I want to go, listen, I've done them in parking lots on the way into things where there's a group of people going, and it's like, that's fine. That's part of the process. But I see absolutely, let me tell you what, I didn't get a single request from these people for a town hall during the Biden administration. Wonder why that is. And so I just think I recognize it for what it is. And I'm not going to apologize for being elected 8 times in a row. I'm not going to apologize for never having lost a county. I think the reason that stuff happens is because people think you are representing your district. And so it's just, hey, if there's some value there that I'm missing, please let me know. But your right to picket, your right to express your opinion, all that's fine. I don't need to have a formal town hall to understand that there are people in the neighborhood who really don't like Donald Trump or Elon Musk or any Republican for that matter. And it's like, I get that, message received. Have a nice day.
How closely have you followed the controversy that our Joe Hart has kind of uncovered with Uprise Fiber? It's this rural broadband project in Lovelock. There was, $27 million from the USDA set aside for this project that never happened. Are you familiar with that? Is your office involved in that process at all?
It doesn't ring a bell as we sit here. Anyhow, I'll have to check and get back with you.
Okay.
Joe Hart didn't share it with me. Tell him to be a sharer, okay?
Oh, yeah. Check his Facebook. Bunch of posts. He's been all over it. And quickly at the end here, your federal lands bill, we've talked a lot about on this show about the Truckee Meadows Public Lands Management Act. You have one that pertains more to rural parts of Nevada, but also the Truckee Meadows as well, the Northern Nevada Economic Development and Conservation Act.
Yes, sir.
How is that bill similar or not to the Truckee Meadows bill sponsored by Senator Jackie Rosen? How does it differ, and what do you want to see come out of that bill?
They don't really. The two bills don't really have much in common. Our foundation, which we do lands bills on, is when we get consensus from the planners and zoners. So if you're talking about the Truckee Meadows, that's the city of Reno, city of Sparks, and Washoe County. And so Senator Rosen, I think, has worked with those folks. The problem is with her bill, which frankly, at least until 26, you have a Republican Senate with Mike Lee from Utah being the chair of the Senate Natural Resources Committee. You got a Republican House. I'm on the Natural Resources Committee because I got a waiver to be on it, as well as the Interior Funding Committee, which is part of appropriations. And Senator Rosen's bill has an 80-to-1 ratio of, in most of it, northern Washoe County, making special conservation areas, wilderness areas, all that stuff. And so just for context, the bill that expanded Fallon was 8-to-1. It had 8 acres of conservation, wilderness, blah, 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 for every 1 acre of NAS Fallon base. The bill that I got out of the House committee last year was 4-to-1. Senator Rosen's bill for Washoe County, because she kind of goes up to northern Washoe County and goes, all of it, is 80-to-1. Those are important numbers when you talk about moving this through, something like that through.
So do you not support her version?
Well, let me be real blunt, so you don't think it's like, I think the chances of a bill that's 80-to-1. Oh, by the way, it also forfeits mining rights, mineral rights, and it also forfeits agricultural rights. The chances of that passing with those 3 components in it, in my opinion, since I'm here, you ask my opinion, are 0. So it's like if there's a lobbying strategy when you have Senator Rosen on here, please feel free to ask her, should you decide, how are you going to get an 80-to-1, getting rid of mineral rights and getting rid of ag rights through the House?
Okay, we will ask her. We do plan to have her on very soon. So
I'll look forward to watching the show.
there we go. As we wrap up here, anytime we have you here, we always have to ask, I mean, is it your intent to run for re-election? I know we just wrapped up the last election cycle, but we do always have to ask, I mean, are you going to run?
No. You know what? I mean, fair question, because I've had some people recently go, so I hear you're retiring. I'm going, well, listen, it's not like I want to do this for the rest of my life. I've always said that. I'm 66 years old. I feel great. I've had the privilege of having support for 8 elections in a row. Not that that means anything for the next one. You got to earn your stripes every day. But we've won every county. We've survived stuff by large portions where somebody outspends us 10-1. The most expensive congressional race in the state. And so it's like, listen, and the responsibility, at least at present, is you are in a position where you're one of the senior people back there and can turn the needle on the dial in great ways for Nevada. And that's a responsibility. And so do I want to do this for the rest of my life? The answer to that question is heck no. But right now, it's like, hey, I feel good. March, you got to sign up again. We're raising money, just like always. And so it's like full steam ahead.
Okay. So, yes, you're running in 2026?
Yes.
Okay. There we have it. All right, Congressman Mark Amodei, so gracious with your time. And we just chatted for 35 minutes, talked about a whole bunch of topics. I really appreciate you getting to sit down with you for our audience, for our viewers, and hear about the issues that matter to Nevadans. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I just need one thing in exchange. I need you to talk to the weather folks and tell them to knock this stuff off. It needs to warm up, please.
The weekend is looking, we're recording this on Friday, but the weekend is looking beautiful.
Okay.
Next week, even more beautiful. So, but I will do that. I'll pass it along.
Deal. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.